Hello and welcome to this week's Back Chat. You might have noticed a change in venue. We're in the Pit Sports Bar in Leeds. How exciting. And we've got a panel to make your eyes water this week as well. Danny Lockwood is from League Weekly Newspapers. Martyn Sadler is from League Express. We've kept them apart. And in the middle is from 4020 magazine, Phil Caplan, an all-round freelance good guy as well. Right, well, there's one topic that is hot on everybody's lips at the moment, and that is the England squad that has been named for the Denver test on June 23rd. 19 players selected, 6 from the NRL, the other 13 from over here, and 3 debutants, in case you've missed it. Tommy Makinson and Luke Thompson from St Helens, and Jake Connor from Hull. So, Danny, first of all, what have you made of all that?
I think it's interesting. I think there are a lot of talking points. I think most people are disappointed there was no place for Danny Richardson, the young sort of St Helens prodigy. I think a lot of people were surprised that George Williams was in there, given the dire form he's had. And personally speaking, Dave, I just think it's a little bit of a poorly balanced side. I hope that guys like Tommy Makinson and Jake Connor are not being taken along just for the ride. And I'm just really disappointed in the coach, Wayne Bennett, actually.
Absolutely nothing I can disagree with there, actually.
Oh, right, really? Wow.
Agreement right at the start. That's worrying. That's worrying. But I mean, I am delighted that Luke Thompson's in, because I think he's been terrific all season for Saints. Like Danny, Danny Richardson, I'm disappointed to see him not there. But
Danny Richardson has not played in a big game. He played in the Wigan derby on Good Friday. But he's not played in a final, he's not played in a big semi-final, he's not been tested at that level. But
this is an ideal game then for him to play in, to give him experience of playing in a big game, isn't it? Because, ultimately at the end of the day, this result won't matter that much. It's not a World Cup game, it's not a game in a test series. It'd be a perfect time to actually, give him a shot at establishing a place in the England team, and I think that's what Wayne Bennett should have done.
I'd have to disagree with that.
Hooray, we've got disagreement.
Because we don't want consensus anyway. I think the important thing is we're also bringing back the England Knights at the end of the year. We now know they're going to Papua New Guinea, which is going to be a fantastic experience, particularly for young players. I think Danny Richardson's next step up is the England Knights. That's where he's earmarked for. Yeah. This is only his first full season. He's played 19, I think, consecutive games. It's physically and mentally tiring, no matter how good you are. But I think that we're missing the point that Jake Connor's in the team, in the squad. An incredibly, I don't know, what would you call him, mercurial kind of player, not a Wayne Bennett sort of player.
Yeah, if he gets a game, because that's it. But that's exactly it. He's not a Wayne Bennett type of player. Now I understand why this squad is largely made up of the guys that were available from last year, plus 1 or 2 bolters.
You've got to keep that team together. So close in a World Cup.
He has very little preparation time. He wants guys that remember the script from the World Cup. So we get that. But I just see that we've got an opportunity here to kind of wow the world, starting with Denver, America, with a brand of rugby that sends out a message. And I get the feeling from looking at a 19-man squad with 5 props in it, that Wayne Bennett will be happy to come back with a 2-0 win.
Yeah, wowing the world isn't on his radar.
It isn't.
That's not what he's about.
He didn't want to wow the world when we went to Samoa mid-season, but it set us up for the World Cup. We've got a 3-match test series against New Zealand in the autumn. So this is just the hors d'oeuvre for that, I think. The other thing is, I'm surprised it's a 19-man squad. I would have taken 20, because the one thing I think we're missing is another hooker. And Darryl Clark has been in fantastic form this year, would have deserved to go there. I just worry a little bit that James Roby can and will play 80 minutes if necessary, but what if he is injured? What if he does pull up in training in the week before when they go out there? Presumably George Williams is in as a backup hooker rather than a half-back.
Well, I think Adam Milner from Castleford would have been a good selection personally. I think he's been outstanding.
Where would you play Adam Milner? I mean, Adam Milner's had an outstanding game, but he's a back rower. He's only playing as an emergency hooker for Castleford.
Yeah, but he can play in that role. Who do you get rid of? Well, you don't get rid of anybody. I tend to go along with what Phil said about taking a 20-man squad.
If John Bateman is in that 17, I give up, because you've picked the two of the form centres in Super League. Mark Percival just went on a holiday down under last year,
which I think will have stood him in good stead.
And yet he's been terrific this year, so he's got to be in. You'd have to think Connor is in because he plays right side, Bateman plays left when he's in the although Bateman has been used on the right side for Wigan.
Would you play Makinson in the centre?
I would play Makinson on the wing, because I think Jerry McGilvray, as great as he's been, he's only just fresh back. I think you've got to reward excitement. That's why I'd have Lomax in there.
Don't you reward McGilvray for being the best player in the World Cup? I mean, he's just coming back from injury, so being fresh is actually a positive.
Yeah.
Not at 5,000 feet, I would say, that famous old nutmeg. I guess that's why we've got 5 props. I can't imagine it may well be that Luke Thompson, bless him, ends up doing a Scott Taylor and just going to carry a water bottle, which would be a real shame.
I think
looking at that squad, I think all the forwards play. Looking at the squad, if Bateman plays in the centre, I think all the forwards play, and it's going to be 2 backs who sit out as 18th and 19th man. I mean, looking at the 19, your full-back is who? Ratchford?
Definitely.
Or Lomax?
No, because Lomax has been playing in the halves this season.
Lomax and Widdop in the halves. That's a great combination. And then that releases Ratchford to full-back, who is
So would you have Williams on the bench?
Ready, as cover for hooker.
Yeah, probably.
So that's your 1, 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Your 2, 3, 4, 5 from that squad.
I'd have
not
McGill.
who you think.
I would go with Makinson. I think Makinson's form this season has been tremendous, and he's been an excitement machine. Jermaine, who I've got tremendous admiration for, but I don't think his form has been quite as good this year as Tommy Makinson. So I'd go with him. I'd certainly go with Connor at number 3, and obviously Percival at number 4. And Ryan Hall goes without saying.
I think what we would go for, and what will happen is, I think Bateman will be chosen in the centre and Connor for his versatility on the bench. But I don't have a problem with McGilvray and Hall either. We forget that Ryan Hall is the leading meter maker of the entire competition. That's the role he's being asked to play. And the other thing to bear in mind is we will be coming up against a very big team. Whoever is selected for New Zealand, they will be physically huge. And that's the other exciting thing. We're focusing a lot on who England are bringing in. New Zealand, it's a whole new era for them. New coach with Michael Maguire, Nathan Kalis is his assistant. They won't pick their team till Sunday, but they're already talking about plenty of debutants. At this stage, I just think we need an exciting spectacle, because it's not about the result, as Martyn says. There's no trophy. It's about how many people turn up and watch it.
Do we think any of the Tongans will go back to New Zealand?
No.
Doesn't look like it, does it?
And I hope not as well. I mean, Tamalolo isn't, Fussy Tour isn't.
No.
So, but they're playing that weekend.
And we've had. I know Simon Manrin's
he's just retired.
Just announced his retirement. They've had a couple more. I think it's going to be a spectacle and it's going to be something to see. But I just wish that we were going in with a little bit more of a
more flair,
adventurous, and
flair.
And I think Tommy Makinson does give you that. Plus cover for centre and full back if you need it. Up front, no surprises. All 3 Burgesses. Whitehead, O'Loughlin and Roby.
Is the issue, should we have chosen a new captain? Which is nothing against Sean O'Loughlin and his record, but if this is the first game towards the 2021 World Cup, the likelihood is he's not still going to be playing.
But if he's still deemed good enough to be playing in that team, then why should he not be captain?
But would this be a chance to blood a new captain? I think in the lead up to?
How important is a captain? How important is a captain?
I think ask Leeds Rhinos right now how important a captain is. I think a captain is incredibly important.
But if you look at that team,
more in a sport like rugby than something like football, I think. And I think that leadership is massive.
But you've got leadership. You've got James Graham in there. You've got Sam Burgess in there. You've got some big noises in there.
I think the next captain is going to be Sam Burgess.
Yeah, it would seem to.
That's the obvious thing, isn't it?
Would it make sense to give him the role now?
No, because not necessarily. Because I think he will take over when the time comes, whenever that is. And I think he'll step into that role very easily.
And I think we go back to the preparation time. These guys are going to have 4 or 5 days together. That's all. And you want that little bit of continuity in the leadership group and what they were used to just a few months ago. So I think that we are at the end of one era, if you like, rather than looking forward to the next. Yeah. Which I think is a little bit of a mistake.
I mean, you could also say when are we going to get the new coach? I mean, the new Wayne is only there for 2 years.
And originally the brief was the next coach was going to take us to the World Cup cycle.
But he might still do, because I mean that when it was announced, it was dressed up as, we'll review again in 2 years, and if Wayne is still considered the right man, Wayne will continue.
And the thing is that by then he probably won't be coaching Brisbane Broncos.
No.
So he'll have far more time to devote to England if he's still the England coach. So that's a thing to bear in mind, isn't it? We don't quite know how that's going to work out.
So rather than look forward to the 2021 World Cup with this squad and this coaching team, should this be pure promotion for the 3-match series in the autumn?
I think it's a standalone test. It's an important test.
But it's a link into those 3 games, isn't it? Because it's the same opposition over here.
Sure.
Well, I hope we actually set about the spectacle a little bit more positively than I think I see when I look at 5 prop forwards. You know, okay, that is always and has been the Wayne Bennett way. Like it or lump it, that's what you're always going to get. And it may well be that I'm proven completely wrong next week. I really hope I am. But I do kind of like, when I look at, with respect to John Bateman and George Williams and the way that, you know, Wigan are playing at the minute, I kind of think if they're on the field, I'm a little bit...
But there is also the question, when you talk about, you know, the 5 prop forwards in the squad, Danny, there is also the altitude factor about Denver, and, you know, the fact that you're going to need to interchange an awful lot probably, and it's quite... I hate to mention the other code, but they played last weekend in Johannesburg at Ellis Park, which is a similar altitude, and they ran out of gas pretty badly in that game, and you know that's the thing to.
They say I think they were saying the only way you can prepare for altitude is actually being there for 10 days before, and England are not going to be, well, New Zealand are not going to be there for 10 days.
And you've got to bear in mind that, you know, players in a rugby league game cover generally far more ground than players in a rugby union match. So you know that's going to be a problem.
As fit as he is, you know, that could be a gamble on James Roby, because if you're expecting him to do 80
well, that's the thing.
he is phenomenally fit.
Well, can I ask? I think I think that we're looking at it and we're recognising it, and it could be a factor and will be a factor. But speaking as someone at 40 years of age, played a while ago, played 3 matches in a weekend at Aspen, which is just up the road, but it's 3,000 feet higher than Denver.
You're playing test match level?
Begs the question. No, I wasn't, Dave, but I was 40. But it does ask this. Denver Broncos play a season's worth of home games in the NFL against, you know, guys from New York and from Los Angeles from ground level. Those guys don't acclimatise up the Andes anymore.
But I don't think
they go over and play, and it's not a problem.
The Broncos very rarely lose a home game, do they?
Look at Chile's record in the World Cup qualifiers. They very rarely lose a home game because they play at altitude.
But it'll be the same for both teams.
It's the same
which will add to the spectacle, because there will be a fatigue factor, and I think that's quite important.
It will be the same, but you know, the team that you know puts it into their planning most effectively will be.
Well,
the team that wins.
Kicking game's going to be massive. Kicking game's going, because that ball will travel. You're 40-20. There could be quite a few 40-20s.
And not to reference the other guys, they found trouble with it at the weekend, did England, you know, because they were putting the ball dead from inside their own half.
Which with a 7-tackle set.
But at their game, brings the ball all the way back.
Yeah.
So Jake Connor ought to be in the side, didn't he? He's going to be probably the best player at kicking a 40-20 in that squad.
Yeah. Roby out of dummy half. Roby's kicking game's improved away over the last couple of years as well. So, who's unlucky not to be in? I mean, we've mentioned Danny Richardson, Scott Taylor, Mike McMeekan, Josh Charlie.
We have a wealth of wingers at the moment.
But the great thing is we're talking about a depth of squad. We are firstly discussing who isn't in there. Well, I think when we picked our 24 for the World Cup, which is not that long ago, the end of last year, I think all of us agreed on about 21 of them.
Sure.
The fact that you've just thrown 3 or 4 names in, and there isn't...
I mean, and your injuries as well. I mean, Kellen Watkins, Josh Hodgson, Alex Walmsley,
this week, which is great news.
Ben Curry.
But I think we've said, you know, that Castleford don't have a single player in the squad, which I'm sure Darryl Powell won't be too upset about, actually. But I still think Michael Shenton's a great centre. You know, the way he played against St Helens, Warrington last weekend, was, I thought, tremendous. You know, and I still think he's got all the class.
Paul McShane,
he was out injured, wasn't he, from that game? So maybe
I thought McMeekan had a great game last week, and I think he's been strong for them in tough times. McMeekan. But the bottom line is you're only picking 19 players, so you are limited. That's why I think personally that Bennett's wasted a couple.
Is there a danger of not derailing St Helens' season? But it could give them a knock, because they've got 5 players in. I mean, I think when the Samoa game last year, it was 3 players maximum to go. So are St Helens being hit hard?
Justin Holbrook's a massive fan of International Rugby League. Was really keen with the representation they had over the World Cup. Was happy, you know, for I think was it 10 or 11 players that they had over all of the teams, Ireland and France. I think having been a coach of the Australian schoolboys is a real valuer of that international element.
And it's not done them any obvious harm.
And they're 6 points clear, so they could afford to drop a couple of games. It wouldn't derail them.
Could that be a signal, perhaps, that Wayne Bennett has already given Holbrook the nod that, listen, don't worry about it, because Makinson and Thompson won't be playing?
I think Thompson will. And like I said before, I think if you look at that squad, I think all those forwards play.
Well, against Samoa, of course, it was the two Saints who didn't play, wasn't it? Walmsley and Percival. So
could it even be that St Helens have asked for Danny Richardson not to be selected at the moment?
Oh, I wouldn't have thought.
I wouldn't have thought so.
You would have hoped not. You would have hoped not.
Yeah. Let me just look at Richie Myler as well. He's kind of creepy. He's had a great season at Leeds. Richie Myler?
No, not for me.
Again, injured in Leeds' last home game against Huddersfield.
But beyond that, I think he's got a lot more to do in a team that is really struggling for leadership. Again, especially without Callum Watkins, I think he really does need to step up.
Although if you compare Richardson and Myler, Richardson's the coming man, and Myler's been there
interesting.
a long time.
Myler is the top of the assists in Super League. He's
Good
created more tries than anybody else in a team that he's not yet fully familiar with.
And he's impressed me. He really has, but I do think there's more to do.
He's going to be one of those, a bit like Danny Maguire, whose last Test cap was about 10 years ago, when you think, maybe Richie Myler deserved more of a chance at international level than he actually got. I know he's played once or twice, but maybe deserved.
How many halfbacks can we say that about?
I'd have played Danny Maguire in this Test.
Tommy Martyn. We should put Tommy Martyn in the squad. Right, that's as far as we go for part one of Back Chat. We're back with more in just a few moments' time. Hello, welcome back to the Pit Sports Bar in Leeds, where we've moved Back Chat for this week and for several weeks to come as well, intriguingly. Our panel today, Danny Lockwood, Phil Caplan and also Martyn Sadler. Martyn, first of all, we've got a new Chief Executive of Super League Europe. Robert Elstone comes in, all trumpets blazing. What kind of a difference is he going to make?
Well, hopefully a big one. I mean, I'm hoping that the biggest difference he makes is that we actually get somebody who actually leads the chorus about Super League, because all too often we've had the Rugby Football League and Super League that doesn't shout about its own merits, and I think Rob will be smart enough to realise that he needs to do that, and we need to up the tempo a bit for the game, because I mean I was reading an article in another publication a few weeks ago about what they called the bus factor in sport, and they looked at various sports in this country and sort of tried to say, well, there's a buzz factor in such and such, and one in this, that and the other. But when they came to rugby league, they said, well, there just isn't a buzz factor about rugby league. No. Whatever a buzz factor means, I think you've got to say that from a general point of view, looking in from the outside, I mean, I think there's a great buzz factor when you see some of the great players in the game, but they're not making an impact on the national stage. Yeah.
It starts
and that's
from
a tragedy.
Not having a
us.
spokesperson, which obviously you would hope Rob, with his standing in sport generally and his demeanour overall, will bring. But also that moves into the area of media management.
Yeah.
So, for example, we just talked about the England squad, which was announced at midday. About 5 minutes before that, Wigan and Hull KR managed to transpire to release a story about Joel Tompkins' move, which obviously, for media that isn't familiar with rugby league, that was the big story. You know, we don't realise that we probably only have one bite in a sports bulletin, and we trumped ourselves then. So hopefully, one of the things he'll bring is some
more discipline.
Well, some kind of a management policy of the stories and the profile that we've got.
A little bit more smarts in that respect. If people don't know who he is, those of us in the know that he has got a terrific background.
Absolutely.
A great understanding and knowledge, not just of this sport, but of sports generally, at the very top level.
If you were designing a chief exec, I think he'd be your design.
He would, and there's a general consensus about that. Rugby league being rugby league, we're still, I think, quite focused on where the politics of this are going to play out. That's an understandable worry. I hope that he brings consensus to the sport. I hope he brings a bit of a vision, a way that the game can unite behind a common a common cause, even if not one central figure, and give us something to be cheery about, because we haven't had it for a while.
I think the key thing is that, there's always a danger when there's going to be conflict between Super League and the rest of the game.
Well, I was going to say, you talk about the buzz factor. We've got it's like buzzes. We've got one buzz factor, and then we're going to get two buzz factors coming on at the same time.
Well,
because the RFL have got to appoint their chief executive as well.
Well, whoever that is, it's very important that those two people are able to not be in conflict. And the fortunate thing is, I think, that Rob Elstone was involved in rugby league probably 20 years ago.
Probably 30 years.
Well, certainly a long time ago.
It feels like a long time.
When the original Super League Europe was set up, and there was a great deal of conflict, and I think Rob will be smart enough to realise that can't be repeated, because he didn't do the game any good whatsoever.
Well, that's his big challenge, isn't it?
Well, his first challenge is to get consensus among Super League, because he hasn't got that at the moment.
No.
Then he's got to look at what is the division of labour between him and the RFL. One of the issues that will come up fairly quickly will be structure.
Yeah.
But the Super League can't implement structure on its own.
I thought it was interesting in this programme last week, Karen Moorhouse, who is part of the RFL, did suggest that 2019 is still up for debate. They're still trying to agree what the structure will be next year. So that won't go away, will it?
No.
I mean, it will be interesting.
Structure.
It will be interesting to see how much I think Rob Elstone is his own man, and how much he takes control of the.
Well, he's going to have to mediate between Ian Lenigan and Gary Hetherington, which is going to be quite difficult.
Because at the moment, you'd have to suggest that all the readings of it is that he's basically the proxy man of Ian Lenigan and Eamon McManus, and that power.
The two huge jobs he's got, which he can't be derailed by politics, and as Danny said, he's aware of the politics in the sport already, which is half the battle, is he's got to bring in new commercial partners quickly, and he's got to sort out the television deal for 2021, which he's got great experience in, which he's the right man to be heading up those negotiations, but he can't spend too much time trying to get people round the desk to agree on whether we have the 8s next year or how the £1 million game's going to work. He's really got to be approaching Amazon Prime or Google or whoever it's going to be that's going to put the game on a wider stage.
In other words, he's got a lot on his plate. But the other point I'd quite like to know a bit more about is where his salary is coming from.
From the clubs?
Well, indeed, but not all the clubs are all that keen on.
Well, the clubs gave away £500,000 at the start of the season. The Super League clubs to Lee.
Yeah.
I've heard that his package is going to be, when everything's thrown in, is going to be north of £400,000.
Part of which will be Roger Draper's salary.
Part of which will be Rogers, and some of it, but even so, that would be double what Nigel Wood and Ralph Rimmer's was.
Didn't Super League
it's a big lump.
Make £1.5 million profit last year? So I assume they're investing that in Rob Elstone. Well, there could be benefits.
You see, the thing is that realistically, is going to need a support staff, and a support staff that's dedicated to Super League. So how much are they going to cost?
Aren't we then in danger of just running two shadow structures? That is the danger here, because the sport isn't big enough for it.
He's going to need a marketing budget as well.
The support staff are actually for the clubs. If we look at the way that his announcement was made, originally made by Everton, about 3-4 weeks ago, so we all knew it was happening. But then it was interesting how his announcement was officially relayed to us as rugby league
by
media,
12 clubs.
By the clubs, not all the clubs, but most of the clubs put out press releases, exactly the same press release.
At the same time.
Do they draw on their collective marketing? Do they draw
No,
on
good luck with that, given how they're doing it at the moment.
He has to have a staff, and he has to have a budget for marketing. Now, I think the issue is, can we really, as a sport, afford two people to head up the game?
If they're doing the right things, we can do.
I'm not
you've
sure.
always got to invest in good people.
I just think Rob at Red Hall, as it currently is, but with a responsibility like Nigel had for the Super League clubs, because it's the chief revenue generator for the sport, is the way to go.
So then it has just been a revolution from inside out, in effect.
Yeah.
It's almost time for benevolent dictatorship, and he could be that man if he's given the power to do it.
Dictatorship. That's a way forward in life.
It worked for.
Well, it certainly happens in my house.
Worked for Hitler. Worked for Stalin.
No, it's not benevolent though.
Lots of the Germans and.
So, do you see a softening of the path between the RFL? Do you think there's enough resistance. I mean, that's the thing at the moment. There doesn't seem a lot of resistance from the RFL. It's not as if the RFL is this big aggressive body at the moment.
Well,
it
none of
almost
us know.
feels primed for
But the
takeover.
other clubs are, the Championship and League One clubs who have a say in the structure of the sport, they are.
I mean, we still have this paradox where the chairman of the RFL, Brian Barwick, is the chairman of Super League Europe.
Yeah.
It's clear that
which
Brian's
a lot of
already,
clubs don't like.
Which a lot of clubs don't like. Brian's already kind of gone native and thrown his weight behind this
Does he
position.
survive, by the way? Does Brian Barwick survive all this?
Or is that why he's moved to the Rugby League World Cup 2021 chairmanship?
It's a very moot point, and none of us know the answer to that one. Do we, really? Let's face it.
But the thing is, this, Rob Elstone has got to at some point sit down with. I know you can't get everyone around the same table, but he has got to sit down with Championship and League One and give them a vision. Well, because
why does he need to give them a vision? Surely it's the RFL who need to give them the vision. He's giving Super League the vision. He's leading Super League in the direction, and obviously we want the whole game to go with him. But surely the RFL need to. That's the RFL's chief executive's jobs, isn't it?
There's a really interesting anomaly here as well when you say that. Let's say another club comes in from New York or somewhere in the Americas. Who decides where they're going to play to best advantage of everybody? Is it the RFL that brings them in, and then Super League, 3 years later, opens the door? Does Super League say, well, if Toronto are up and let's say they go up this year or next year, we'd want another team from that continent near to them so we can get television revenue and commercial partners? At the moment, it's a lot of dots that don't seem to be joined.
The point is that the natural instinct of an organisation like Super League, particularly when it appoints somebody like Rob, is to be protective of itself and of those clubs that are in it. And they are going to, those 12 clubs, as they are now, are going to want to remain in Super League, come what may. And what you might expect to see them doing is creating rules that actually prevent other clubs coming
well,
in or them falling out.
Isn't that the other white elephant, though?
The structure is, that's the argument about the structure, isn't it? It's not so much that the structure isn't working, it's the danger that some of the bigger clubs could actually fall down, have a bad middle fall into the middle eights, crop of injuries, could find themselves relegated. It's clubs protecting themselves against that, isn't it? Right.
But also, what if Rob Elstone wants to bring back franchising as being the way ahead for Super League, and he's looking at some of those clubs, even in the Championship or League One or newly formed clubs, to go in his division? You've got to make that work. You can't just pluck that out. You have to do it with consensus,
isn't it? I mean,
well, maybe he's got it. I mean, a lot of people were saying, that Richard Scudamore's just quit or said he's going to quit the FA Premier League at the end of the year, and quite a few people have said Rob Elstone would have been a potential candidate for that job if that had cropped up before the Super League job cropped up. So a lot of people rate him very highly.
And the thing about Super League at the moment, we know there's a lot of clubs in there without any energy. That don't feel like they've got the grasp of the positivity required at this stage. And there are clubs in the Championship and League One who you would say, actually, they have a real potential to add some pizzazz to Super League if they're given the encouragement
and
to
that's the idea about. I think one of the other issues that the whole of the game needs to look at, that Rob may even have to lead on, is participation and dwindling numbers both at the bottom, but also without, picking on them in particularly, Castleford are not able to fulfil an academy fixture this weekend because they haven't got enough players. Now, you talk about buzz and pizzazz, they're the team that have brought it all to Super League in the last year and a half. Now, how is he going to solve participation? The Midlands Academy, the Cumbrian Academy have been shut down. They're RFL initiatives, but Super League needs them. How are we going to bridge that vitally important gap?
League, I think clubs ought to have a requirement to have at least 10 junior clubs under their umbrella with kids playing in all age groups. I think
but again, it's not something that Super League alone
can implement. How many development
it.
officers are there in Rugby League at the moment?
Well, a lot of them have lost their jobs over the last 3 or 4 years of cost cutting.
I don't know.
Which is ridiculous.
There are some fundamental issues here that would have been a problem for whoever was sat in the chair. I would like to think that Rob Elstone is the man to, with the energy and the know-how to bring fresh vigour to it, to bring people together. But the fact is, you look at from academy, we still need a functioning reserve system, I believe. Everybody agrees on it. Nobody except the
but it only works if you've got more and more players coming in at the bottom to feed it, and that's the problem. And the last time we had a reserve grade, a lot of those teams weren't serviceable.
And that is where Rob Elstone has got to bring together the rest of the game apart from Super League, because they are the ones that fundamentally feed the sport.
There's a big sorry, Phil.
I was just saying, one other issue at the moment is the look of the sport, the philosophy of the sport. We've had a lot of ex-players talking about gamesmanship is coming in, games are going on for 2 hours that are televised. Does Rob Elstone again have any influence at all on lawmaking?
But that's an issue, but I don't think it's the most important issue he's going to be dealing with.
But look is important. To market the sport, you don't want people coming out saying, we've got some games at the moment that are tough watches. The element of the hard yards is going because people are milking penalties.
But it's funny, as a sport, we're very good at sort of pointing out, there might be 10 rugby league games played, one of which is a terrible game, for example, as the Huddersfield Catalan's Challenge Cup game was a couple of weeks ago, but we'll focus on that game and not the 9 good ones.
But if there's a trend coming into the sport,
the Saturday game that weekend, Warrington against Wigan, and we would say as rugby league purists, a bit one-sided, second half. 1.1 million watched that on terrestrial TV. The Sunday, 1 million people watched that on the Sunday.
And that was a return to
BBC Two.
More people watching on BBC Two at times than were watching whatever was on at BBC One at that time. So we've got the product. We know that we've got the product.
We have.
And how much influence will somebody like Rob have on discipline, for example?
Well,
Because
there's an issue, because if Super League wants to run the game, then what about the referees?
Absolutely.
What about the disciplinary committee?
Well, that's all RFL, isn't it?
I don't think they want to run it that much.
That costs them even more money.
But
where does the RFL get the money if the Super League clubs have got all?
Well, that's drilling him down to the really to the micro level.
Yeah, the thing about Rob is, if we can burden him with enormous detail, can't we, and make him, turn him into a pedantic administrator. That surely isn't his role.
But isn't that
He's
the
there
role
to promote the wider picture.
The chief operations officer of the RFL picks up all of that, and the chief executive of the game as a whole, we only have one.
Yeah.
And that's Rob. He's the bloke that stands on the bridge and points the ship.
And he's
in the
already
right
kind of
direction.
taken a realistic stance on this by saying, let's forget about the past now. Let's not talk about the past problems. Let's look to the future, but let's embrace the fact that it's one thing having a vision. It's something completely different to actually deliver that.
And let's give him time and opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Good appointment then.
Well, Rob, I think, is an excellent appointment. I think he's got the potential. I mean, it's a good appointment because he's got an obvious love for the game. He's been involved in it before, and I think that's quite important. So he's not coming in with it. I know it was 20 years ago perhaps, but nonetheless, a lot of the issues still remain that were still relevant then. So, but he's got this tremendous experience now out of the game in not just for Everton, but for Deloitte's and
I think
various other places.
2 things stand out on his CV. One is he's also heavily involved in the business of sports economics, and that's vital. I think the other
he's worked with Sky TV on the
and I think the other thing
as
is
well,
Scottish Premier League, which we are akin to. I think.
Absolutely, and we'll find out what more we're akin to in part 3 of Backchat, which follows after these commercials. So welcome to the third and final part of this week's Backchat from the Pit Sports Bar in Leeds. It's an intriguing venue, and we've got some more intriguing chatter to have as well. One thing we've not spoken about is a game on the field. We spent about half an hour talking about off the field, but what about on the field? It is, to use that word again, an intriguing part of the season. That kind of battle to get out of the bottom 4 and stay in the 8s, that could be what really absorbs us in this next few weeks.
I think we've probably got 3 of the bottom 4, which makes the Huddersfield Catalan game this week even more
So you're condemning
exciting.
Widnes, Salford and Hull KR?
I think so at this stage. I think the dark horses for me as we go towards the top will be Castleford and Hull. So I think it might actually be an advantage to them at this stage to have been knocked out of the Cup.
It's interesting that of those 3 clubs that Phil's just mentioned, some of them are recruiting already for the qualifiers.
I think that is the Joel Tompkins scenario.
Joel Tompkins, Haraki going to Widnes. They're clearly thinking ahead now that they're going to be in that.
And it just tells you that there aren't many players available if it's this recycling again. But
but be very careful about saying that the Huddersfield Catalans game is going to be a great game.
I didn't say it was great.
I said 2 weeks ago, I said that it would be a great
It's free admission, so let's hope it is.
Well, it is actually. I mean, I thought Huddersfield were very underwhelming on that day. But they've found
But it does look a good game.
They've found some real form at the moment. Catalans have finally found some form. I think we're looking actually now, I agree with Phil entirely. I think the battle now is to avoid the drop into that, and I think it's the teams that are in danger of it. And I think specifically we look just down the road to the Leeds Rhinos, who are
got some work to do.
They've got some real
both
work
Huddersfield
to do.
and Catalans could actually potentially overtake Leeds. If,
and
if
I know that
especially
Brian
as Leeds
McDermott
play Catalan a week on Wednesday.
I know Brian really believes in his group, and there's no crisis. And what was he say? This isn't a beaten group. We're just losing games.
A lot of injuries.
Well,
a lot of injuries,
but a lot of teams have, and I think we've seen Hull and Castleford particularly absolutely conquer that particular obstacle.
I thought
recently.
Castleford's win at Warrington was one of the great performances of this season.
Yeah.
Of any season.
And Darryl Powell said it was the best result he's had.
Hull's performance at St Helens in the Cup, equally. I mean, obviously Hull didn't win that one, but again, it's...
But I think that's given them the belief that they can now go on and get to a grand final. And I think the other thing with Castleford and Hull, going back to both those, they're going to have hopefully players coming back who will be really important at exactly the right time.
Well, it's interesting now. You look at looking at the top 4, who's going to be in the top 4, and it looks now to be 4 out of 5.
Absolutely.
What about Wigan, though? Should we be putting a question mark over Wigan, who
Wigan are still
have just
second.
had the most odd 3 weeks that you couldn't have predicted at the time? Are they likely to drop out of the top 4?
I think you have to have faith in Sean Wayne and the team he has around him, and Sean O'Loughlin, of them steadying the ship at least enough to get enough wins to stay up there.
But what you've got to bear in mind is
games, Hull and Castleford.
Wigan lost at Wakefield last week. But they often lose at Wakefield, actually.
I think it's the manner in which they've lost their last 3 games. Do you think there's
I don't think they were as bad as all that at Wakefield, actually. I was there.
Wakefield were very good.
Wakefield 3 hours without scoring a point?
Absolutely not.
But again, against Warrington, by their own admission, they look very, very flat. Very flat. And
has this been the influence of Sean Wayne's announcement?
But you'd expect it to work the other way, wouldn't you? I mean, these are his group. These are his boys. You'd think, right, let's have one for the boss. Let's do it tough from here. Let's dig deep. And you're right. It was as though someone had put something in the drinks.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's a long season, and you can't be at your highest level every single week. Nearly every team goes through a slump at some stage. I think just maybe a week.
But as you said, this isn't the time of the season to necessarily have it when you're jockeying for those positions. Because virtually every team they play between now and the split is a top 8 team, and then they'll play the top 8 teams again.
They're not going to drop out, and if they get themselves right after, even if it's another week or 2, Phil, they then come down to the crunch, down to the Super 8s, and they can see who they need to knock off. I'm pretty confident that Wigan will be in that top 4. I think the question is Hull or Cass.
Whether they hang on to second or not is probably a question. But like you say, I think top 4, and they've got the know-how. I mean, it's a bit like St Helens last year. Leeds every year. They know what to do at the business end of the season.
I think the top 2 will be Saints and Warrington. I think Warrington are looking.
It's looking that way. I think.
Although that was a blip on Warrington's part, losing to.
You just mentioned quite right that every team has a dip in form. The one team that hasn't really this year is St Helens. Should they be worried that when it really matters?
They've not had many injuries.
They've not had injuries. I mean, Wigan have had 1 or 2, but I think Wigan they've gone pretty much unscathed. But
Warrington are selecting virtually unchanged every week.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've just apart from they lost Ben Curry long term, but apart from that, they're cracking on. I think there was only Dom Crosby missing from their first 17 apart from Curry. So
and the kid Tyrone Roberts has suddenly found his feet. He looks
suddenly looks more comfortable.
It looks like he's got time on his hands.
So would you bring Kyle Eastland in now that Roberts is finding his feet?
Well, it all depends whether Roberts has told them he's going home at the end of this season.
But now he's playing well, and the sun's shining, and
I do think. I mean, they lost that game, did Warrington, against Castleford, against an absolutely spectacular Castleford, basically down to goal kicking.
It was, yes. They actually scored more tries.
They scored 6 tries against 5. They've been giving it to Harvey Livett, who's a young man who I think has struggled the last couple of weeks. You know, they have other guys out there that Bryson Goodwin came over.
I was amazed to see him kicking, actually.
You know, you've got Deck Patton that can kick on the bench. But I do think that when it comes down to the tight games, and that certainly was one. I mean, you've got young Callum Turner there that came in. I think Daryl Powell says he's kicked 2 goals for the under-19s. Powell was walking around the changing room saying, "Who's going to kick the goals, lads?" And this kid says, "Oh, I'll have a go, boss." Didn't he do well?
Fantastic.
Didn't he do well?
How good a signing is James Greenwood?
Oh, I think he's a Joe Greenwood.
Sorry, James.
Yeah, massive.
I think he's a good one. I can't understand why he's not getting into the Gold Coast Titans team this year. Gareth Brennan, the new coach there, just, you know, for some reason doesn't rate him very highly. But you know, I thought he played well for the Titans last year. The games that I saw, and you know, I think he'll be an asset.
I wonder who signed him. Is it Wigan's next coach? Did he
have Chris Wedlinski is kind of football executive.
In the advent of Tompkins Gate, the one thing that's happened is everybody's benefited apart from the reputation of the game.
Yeah. Will he come straight away, Joe Greenwood?
Yes,
now?
he's on his way.
Is it 3.5 or 2.5?
No,
something and a half, isn't it? So
I think he'll play next week.
So that freshens things up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, especially losing Joel Tompkins. I mean, you know, I think that's a good swap.
Okay, let's just a quick prediction before we move on. Quick prediction. Then, if it's going to be the bottom 4, and if you're already saying Salford, Widnes, Hull KR, who's going to be the 4th? Will it be Leeds? Will it be Huddersfield? Will it be Catalan?
I'd much rather you ask me after.
No, I'm asking you now.
Right.
I'm asking you now, which is the fun of it.
I think Castleford will. I think rather Catalans will beat Huddersfield at the John Smith Stadium tonight, and I think therefore Huddersfield might just fall back into that bottom 4. But if Huddersfield win tonight, I think they'll be safe. I think tonight's game is crucial.
So that's no answer then, Martyn.
Well, no, I
see that fence. Go and sit.
Thank you. Well, it's a bit like sitting on a fence.
But are you not predicting Leeds to fall from grace then?
It's hard to predict Leeds to fall from grace, isn't
it? They've done it before.
They have, and you know, you could see it happening, but you just, you know, you just think that they will rescue the situation.
But they're a weaker team now, Leeds, than when they did drop out of the 8. I think they might struggle, but I would still go with Caplan having that 4th spot.
I'm not sure, because I think Michael McAloram's now doing what Tyrone Roberts is at Warrington, and that when he's playing well.
Drinkwater's been massive.
Remy Casti is arguably the best player in Super League.
And this kid Kenny Edwards they've signed looks a useful signing as well.
That's off the back of McAloram. I think if you keep your pivotal play, when you think that Ayton's retired, and obviously Lange and Drinkwater had to come in.
And Steve McNamara has finally got them playing as they should have been during all season.
I think they can be a threat for the remainder of this year, and they've got a semi-final to look forward to. They've got every incentive.
So quick one-word answer, or two if you want to include a nickname. Who's going to be the bottom 4 alongside Hull KR, Salford and Widnes? If we're condemning those, who's the other team?
Huddersfield.
I'll say Catalan.
You're going to say Catalan?
Well, I sell a lot more papers in Huddersfield and Leeds.
Only one word, yes. Very diplomatic. Well, if they're the bottom 4, who's going to make up the middle 8s? Lee are on a bit of a charge at the moment. Good win, big win against Halifax. If they'd lost that, whoa, they're adrift. Are Lee going to carry on this charge? Are Lee going to make...
Well, we'll see this weekend, because they're playing in Toulouse, aren't they? So
and then
that's a massive game. That's a massive game for Lee. You know, Lee really can't afford not to win in Toulouse, I don't think. But I actually think I think the top 4, obviously Toronto. I think Lee will make it. I think Toulouse will make it, and I think the other team will probably be Featherstone. Actually,
right. Not Halifax, not London.
Hard to say. It's such an even contest, but I think Featherstone just have probably a bit more quality.
London have got a smallish squad, and that might catch up. I think what they've done already is overachieve. I think they've had a fantastic season, and Danny Ward should be roundly complimented for that. But I think it's going to be between Featherstone and Halifax, which will be the first time that's happened with the.
I mean, Halifax nearly beat Lee at the weekend, didn't they? You know, you've got to give them a lot of credit.
Again, Halifax is a story that's gone completely under the radar. Nearly bankrupt and then turn it around again.
But if we're talking about teams who can legitimately compete to make the middle eights as competitive as we want it to be, then I think we should all really be cheering a little bit for Lee, because I think they would bring more to that party.
Because you look at that top four and you suspect, I mean, without being disrespectful to Halifax and Featherstone, you suspect they're at their level, that Super League might be a step too far, and forgive me, Halifax and Fev fans, before you start on Twitter, do London really have... We all love to see a London in Super League. Does that current London setup have enough about them to... No,
not really, but I still think it'd be rather nice to see them in the top four, though, and in the qualifiers.
But there'll have to be a lot of changes.
And I think the same thing about Toulouse.
The stadium would need upgrading. They talk about putting a...
I think the big story, if someone was coming up that we'd all love to see, would be Toronto.
Well, we're assuming that Toronto are going to be in the mix.
But I mean, to come up to Super League, that would really
changes the dynamic.
I think we're assuming they're going to be challenging for that because of everything that goes with them. Toulouse, have Toulouse got...
I love the way they play. I think they bring a freshness. I don't know if they'd be able to do that
Jonathan
up against
Ford is a really nice player.
He's a Super
really
League player with the risks he takes. And
well, I don't know, but we'll find out, won't we, probably?
But Tony Morell's try at Blackpool was as
good
as
in the top four.
Good as we've seen.
Absolutely terrific. Yeah, they are an exciting
another great
team.
coach, young coach.
And this is a Toulouse team, essentially, that's come through together over recent years. And you know...
And I think they probably have the financial backing as well, if
they probably could get it if they needed it.
I think they would.
So here's a question for two newspaper proprietors who are eager to keep sales up in core areas. If you're going to swap two, if you said two Super League clubs are going down this year and two Championship clubs are coming up, what would your preference be? Which two could you say Super League could manage without, and which two could Super League
well, then I think
really
you would have to. I think you know what I'm going to chicken out a little bit here, Dave. Let's leave it to the numbers game.
Right.
Which are the two least viable economic clubs in Super League at the moment, and which are the two most that could come up? So I think that would unfortunately condemn Widnes and Salford.
Yeah.
And I think
what about Huddersfield? Because Huddersfield have got great numbers watching.
Well, they might not have great numbers watching, but they've got a bankroll behind them that's beyond the other two.
That can't last forever.
It can't last forever, but it's there for the next year. And I think that would possibly open the door for Toronto and Lee or Toulouse.
Right. What do you reckon? Well, not possibly on the road, but who would you like to see up? What would your preference be? Everything else being equal, which of the Championship clubs at the moment, which two would most benefit Super League?
Well, I think Lee are a Super League club, really, at heart, and I think they ought to be in Super League. And obviously Toronto...
You say obviously Toronto?
Well, Toronto are obviously, way ahead of the pack at the moment in the Championship. They're
way ahead of the Wolfpack.
Yeah, they are, and so I think they are. Since they were created, their aim has been to get into Super League as quickly as possible, and they've had the plan, and they've not
had many hiccups, have they?
I think the one thing to compliment Toronto on at the moment is the fact that they haven't played a game for 6 months at home by virtue of their stadium being renovated, and drew a crowd of 7,500 for the London game,
which 80% of Super League clubs would have loved to have had.
But that says there's a sustainable business there. So I'd like to see Toronto come up. I think that would really shake up the division. And I guess because of the expansionist in me, I'd love to see Toulouse. I just think it would be such a benefit to have a French derby in Super League. But
how does that affect the... I mean, as expansionists, we'd all love to see that, but then you'd have almost a quarter of Super League not bringing any fans. If
but if you can't sell a home game against Toronto or Toulouse, I think the other thing, going back to the eights and who may come up and go down, the team, depending on the finishing positions, which obviously we're far too far out, at the moment, the team that's 12th in Super League could be playing Toronto, Caplan and Toulouse. You could be almost relegated on the basis of geography. Logistically, that's going to be.
But it's interesting. You talk about Catalans and Toulouse having a derby. Of course, they might have a derby in the qualifiers.
But to have it on a regular basis,
that'd be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Talking to some of the French broadcasters, because there is a myth a little bit about how much money is brought in by having Catalans games. It's not a lot. In fact, it's probably not anything. No. But talking to a couple of the broadcasters down there, the problem that they've got is they can't feature a game every week.
Yes.
But if they had Toulouse and Catalan, and there was one of them featured in 2 derbies, or this being Rugby League, 8 derbies a season, there is money there for that. So again, if you're looking at Rob Elstone coming in, making an impact, bringing new money,
I'm not sure.
Would that work?
I'm not sure how much that brings to
Not initially, but it might do in the longer term.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. But that's an intriguing question for this intriguing panel of intriguing show of Backchat this week. Let's just remind ourselves of what you can glean from our website. Have a look at this: www.freesports.tv. That's, don't forget the S, www.freesports.tv. Everything that happens on this channel you can see. And don't forget to catch up with the latest Toronto game, which takes place on Saturday night coming against Dewsbury Rams. It looks as though it's going to be a terrific game. Kicks off 9:30 English time, UK time. So on air at 9:15, Toronto for the second week running back in Toronto. But that's as far as we go for this week's Backchat. Thanks to Danny, to Phil and to Martyn. And we'll see you again in a week's time with Rod Studd sitting in this chair.